Ellen wants to get through. This is Molly working at the computer. She's so talented. But anyway, your dog is going to have a home at the office. That's just important to think about, you know, so it's going to need to have a home. All right, Ellen, I'm just going to skip through all this so that you can get, there's the dog.
They will appreciate it.
I know. So these dogs really do work full time. I mean, you're thinking about a dog that's going to come to your office 8 to 5 every day. All right. And we come, if you're interested and can't afford the low fee that we charge, we come to you and train your judges, your staff. We usually try to have one CLE and get your defense and prosecuting attorneys to come and decide in this courthouse, how are we going to use the dog and that sort of thing, and also help you with fundraising ideas. You might remember this, David. This is when we were down at up at Albany trying to persuade them to. Okay, we will just go through this, Ellen, and you can get to your favorite thing. There's lots of rules here, but all right, go ahead. Let's see. Ellen, let me get through this. Back up so you can talk.
You do the setup.
Okay, so these dogs do work really hard all day, but one thing I hear a lot from people is, why would she act like this? Isn't she terribly depressed? Or we've heard that maybe we drugged her to make a Labrador Retriever act like this. And the worst thing we've heard is that maybe we've used a shock collar or something, and she's afraid to get up because something's going to happen. And this is a trained behavior that, of course, she was selected for this because she was a quiet dog. But this is a trained behavior. And one day, we happened to have Molly and Jeter with us at a courthouse up in Skagit County all day. And on the way home, we had the Seattle Police Department videographer with us who does our videos. And we asked him to come in the backyard and see what happens when they get home.
Comment on the handler.
Oh, I'm sorry. And the excellent dog handler. The excellent dog handler. Okay. All right, Ellen.
Hey, Jeter, sit. Roll. Sit.
And they are good. So release is one of their keywords. It means you can do any accepted behavior. This is what they're.
So she'd much rather be doing this.
Yeah, this is, if she were on release right now, this is
she'd
what
be
she
running
would
around
do.
here.
Okay, is that enough, Ellen, so we can have some questions?
Yes, that's
all right, it goes on, but let's skip over that and turn on the lights and have questions.
And before you leave, get one of Molly's trading cards. It's got lots of information in our website on it. So, questions? Yes.
When you're mentioning the dog brokering piece between hospital attorneys, I was just wondering, how do they do in environments where there are a lot of people coming in and out, some of whom might be kind of angry or loud?
Fine. I'll make it quick.
Yeah, I mean, how are they doing, like, in terms of, are they okay with it? Like, are they bothered?
No.
The dogs, no.
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 And in fact, when we raise puppies in the Seattle area for canine companions, one thing we're required to do is take them to hockey games so they get used to people yelling and stomping and being angry. And Molly doesn't even look up. We had her one time in a courtroom situation at a hearing, a pretrial hearing, where the defendant got really upset and started turning over chairs, and he was firing the attorney, yelling. She didn't even pick her head up. She rolled her eyes like, oh, Mom, really? You know, this is getting loud in here, but it doesn't seem to bother her very much at all.
So, I mean, certainly if somebody came at her, she would get frightened, but no, she just goes through it. Yes?
Have you found that the programs are accepted facility by facility, or each court has to make the decision? Is there any place that somebody will make the decision that this district or this county?
Oh, we didn't talk about the legislation.
Right. Well, there is legislation. There are 5 laws about this, but actually this is very organic. It took LA County 5 years to get this going because there were so many layers of bureaucracy there. Little tiny communities, a child advocacy center, a district attorney's office, there's like 10 people in the office. I mean, that can happen in 6 months. It just is on a case-by-case basis in terms of, is everybody on board? Anybody throwing up, walls or not?
Do you find that one county that, I don't know the counties in California, but LA County went, and then it was easier for the next county? And the next
Oh, yes, and actually, we have a list of where all the dogs are placed, and you can just see that once it hits one state, then usually there's a lot of momentum. Actually, New York State's had dogs for quite some while, and I'm just surprised that there aren't more dogs in New York, especially with that great case law. Yes?
Well, one, just this is wonderful and so heartwarming and wonderful in so many ways. One, I guess maybe constructive criticism. I wonder, would you consider, I know you train the dogs, puppies, and I know a lot of people here support animal rescue, and that's maybe the one thing that doesn't sit well with us. Would you consider trying, in the future, training rescue dogs? I know that a lot of successful police dogs and other dogs that have been trained for highly specialized things have come from shelters, and they're, pit bulls and mixed breeds of all sorts. And it would just be wonderful if those dogs could be given a chance to do the same
Well, the
thing.
problem is that we don't know what their experience have been before they ended up there. So you have a dog with unknown history. You have a dog, by the time they come out of the shelter, are suffering from their own PTSD. It's very, very stressful for them. Our animal behaviorist says that it takes several months for a dog to recover from that and to kind of really show their true colors. And I think if you want to get heartwarming for those dogs that have gone through that process, it's much better to keep them in a loving home rather than to subject them to the high-stress environment that we work in. And the other thing is that you don't know, because there are people from all walks of life approaching this dog. It may be the dog may be perfect, but it may be the guy with the baseball hat on backwards that abused this dog. And then you have a stress reaction, either fear or aggression or whatever. And if that happens in the middle of a trial or in a child advocacy center, totally unexpected, think about the ripple effects, not only on the dog, but then on the child, the trial, etc. So in all fairness to the dog and these mission critical environments we're putting these dogs in, it's best to have a dog that is 90% going to have the temperament to be successful at this. So it really, in all honesty, I don't think it is fair to the dog to put them through that. I think they have just as great value as a pet. And the thing about the law enforcement dogs, the bond dogs, the tracking dogs or whatever, there are a lot of them that do great work, but while they're working, they are often uncontrollable. I work with SPD narcotics, and those dogs were quite dangerous. There was one time at a railroad station where they had a drug sniffing dog, and the dog approached this child who was holding on to her teddy bear, and the dog just grabbed it out and tore it to shreds. So it isn't fair to the dogs to do that, and we have to be safe around the community. And I'm sorry you don't agree with me. There was one other
Well,
person.
this is just continuing, because I asked Celeste the same question, and one of the things, the flip side of that she stressed, that sort of convinced me, was that the monitoring process, that the dogs are monitored for health, for temperament, for everything, from the moment they're born. And you just can't, other than the dogs that are born in shelter,
Yeah.
you can't have that kind of monitoring all the time throughout the dog's life.
And I have to say,
And I wanted to point out Emma, that's one exception. That Emma dog that was on the witness stand was born, you were absolutely right, she was born in the shelter, and the shelter called the accredited service dogs to go and say, we have this amazing litter of, they look like they're they look like purebred German golden retrievers, would you like to come see? And they took one of them, and they were successful training her, but that's because they started as soon as she was weaned.
Within hours,
Yeah.
right. And
So-
at this organization, only 50%, with all of that, only 50% of the dogs graduate because they want to be very, very careful that this is a success. So you had a question?
Yes, I was just curious, you touched on this, but I was curious about the reaction of the defense bar in terms of, did they have serious objections? I mean, what, because of their, their fear of the sympathy factor?
Well, yes, and so what we work out, especially what, we address this in our website about how to reconcile this, but I think it's has much more meaning when we all get together and talk about this we talk to the judges separately, but the defense and prosecutors. It's our position, and I've been so happy that almost 95% of the prosecutors I've dealt with have agreed with us that these dogs should be available to any vulnerable witness that could benefit from the presence of the dog, which would be defendants. So we're trying to make this equitable. The defense would have to make meet the same level of proof for the need for the dog or the justification for having the dog assist in this way. And then just take those extra steps to make sure that you try to dial down any potential prejudice by having the dog placed out of sight, etc., jury instructions. We've had dogs present during trials, and in the twins case that you heard about, the girls, mistrial. Another case, mistrial. Juries do follow the instructions, and it's not automatically that they're going to be overwhelmed by the presence of the dog. Yes?
You didn't talk about insurance costs. Is
Oh,
that-
you mean for the dog?
Yes, for the
Yes,
dog.
I should have mentioned that. So among many of the differences between the different accredited service dog schools, Molly is covered with a $1 million liability insurance policy 24/7, whether she's working or not, by Canine Companions, who owns her. So we have a signed contract with the service dog school that bred and trained Molly. She was provided to us free of charge. The dogs from Medford, Long Island come to you completely free of charge, and the insurance policy is always in effect. The schools that don't provide insurance, usually it's not a problem for an agency to obtain liability insurance because the dogs have the same degree of training as a service dog, and so there's lots to look back at to norm the insurance on.
And if it's criminal court or family court, there's usually the county or the city already has police dogs that are covered with insurance, and those dogs some are perfectly polite, but some are not. And so it's easy to get these dogs covered under the city or county insurance. In some cases, homeowners insurance has covered these dogs. The insurance has not been a problem.
You had a question?
Do you know if Canine Companions has rolling admissions for our handlers, or is it specific times during
Oh,
the year?
that's a really good question. Thank you for asking that. You apply whenever you're ready, and they go through the ask for an application, phone interview, in-person interview. Team trainings only happen 4 times a
Isn't
year.
it 5? Yeah, it's 5?
Not that I know.
Okay.
So that, yes, there are only 4 times a year that they have team training. So once you're on the waiting list, say they have a dog ready in August for you, they'll call you and say, well, we think we have a dog for you. Would you like, we're inviting you to come to team training. If you can't come then, you can put them off until November. But you do have to go for those 2 weeks to the campus.
Does the secondary handler also have to go to the training?
That's negotiable.
Right.
The primary handler has to. Some of the Canine Companions campuses, there are 6 nationwide, require the secondary campus handler to come for the whole 2 weeks, and some are willing to do a shorter training for the secondary handler.
And just because you want to be the handler, it's the assistance dog organization that
That says yes or no.
says yes or no, because they want to make sure that this dog's going to be well cared for. They maintain oversight of the dog over your working career together.
That's right. I should have said that you have to be recertified every year with the dog. So-
Right, and they want to make
Hope
sure
you're
that the
making-
dog is not abused or neglected, and most of them retain ownership of the dog, so that if the handler isn't doing his or her job, they can take the dog back. Was there somebody over here? Yeah?
You talked at great length, and I see wonderful value in the work that the dogs do, and you talked about it only in the criminal context. And I wondered, with so many vulnerable litigants, like older people who come to court, or have some sort of diminished capacity. Can you give an example, or have you thought about expanding to the civil area?
Oh, yes.
Where it seems the dogs would be so
Yes,
valuable as well.
that has exploded, and we have the judges driving that. And so, yes, that is becoming more and more common. Lots of CASA organizations are guardian ad litem organizations, are the dog's handlers, but that has been highly successful. And I think eventually you're going to have just as many dogs involved in that as in others. I mean, I remember when I was working in the lobby, there was more tears and arguments in divorce court than there was, and in drug court than there was in criminal court at times.
And I wanted to say also, one of the wonderful things about using a dog as an accommodation is that they're portable. So that, for instance, the prosecutor in Seattle that is the primary handler for Errol, her new dog, is the elder abuse prosecutor. And she says it's great because Errol can go to the hospital or go to the group home. So she can provide that accommodation when she needs to interview a potential victim.
Is there an example of a court system that actually has the dog themselves, that makes it available when it's seen in the court, as opposed to a supportive agency or a social
Well, yeah,
services
in
or a prosecutor?
Marion County, Ohio, that family court, it's a court administrator. The judges made that happen. And there are a couple of other organizations where it is court administrators that are driving this. And I think that's the perfect way to go, because then the dog is really neutral and you can plug the dog in where needed. If this is a tough calendar, the ideal situation is to have a person as the handler. That's their primary job. They're not also being a victim advocate or being a deputy prosecutor at the same. Their job is to facilitate that interaction and dial down the emotional trauma when it's happening. That's what our goal is for this, but that costs money. So right now, we're just having the professionals that are already doing that interaction with the clients being the dog's handlers.
We also have a dog in the district attorney's office in Dutchess County now.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yes?
I was curious, what does retirement look for like these dogs?
Oh, so we mentioned that.
She's 9.5.
I know, so we've been thinking about this. So when the facility dog retires, first of all, it's a joint decision between the primary handler and the assistance dog school that trained the dog. And the handler gets the first choice to keep the dog, which is what's happening with Molly. You know, we're getting a successor dog, but we're keeping her. But if the handler is not able to keep her, the schools have a very long list of people waiting to adopt dogs that can't work. I can't think of any facility dogs that have had to go to a secondary handler, but say I was in a wheelchair with a very serious disability and I just couldn't handle 2 dogs in my home. There would be somebody who wanted her. But most of them retire sometime between 9 and 11.
Does the handler have any say in that, or the vet?
About retiring them.
About when it's time for a dog?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
you can really tell with Jeter, his last year, he was really slowing down and was in a lot of pain, and it was just, so it was just very clear. It can happen very suddenly. Molly just keeps chugging along, but we realize that she's snoring right now, so.
So yes, when we went into the their main campus and had her do a complete vet check recently and asked the head handler, the trainer there, how will we know? And they say, well, the time will come when she won't want to go with you. You know, she'll say, oh, just leave me here in bed. And right now it hasn't come. She's bounding to the door. But
So I know some of you have to go, do you want to see what Molly can do?
oh,
when
okay.
she's
You go show Mom.
Right. And if you like, we can just put on a little demonstration and you can stand up to look at that. Okay, Molly.
Where's her leash?
Release. It's free time. Stretch. Come here, Molly. Who's going to be the handler?
Why don't you handle it? I will move her bed so that she won't continue to go back.
All right, so can everybody see? All right.